Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns continuing training camp out at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. First padded practice, and they had to move it up a little bit as some rain out in West Virginia. So practice moved up to 8:45 to avoid thunderstorms. Still practiced in the rain in full pads. Deshaun Watson getting after it at quarterback, throwing. This time he hooks up with David Njoku. The two hooking up quite a bit. Watson to Njoku again, working in some shell practices as well. Here's to Moore this time, and he finds Amari Cooper as well. No 11-on-11s again as the Browns kind of ramping up things even in pads. So first day in pads, they'll get after it a little bit more substantially tomorrow. A good look at McLeod and Delpit working the drills as well as the defensive line. So Andrew Berry addressed the media today, talked about his goals and his approach to this season. All right. We are working to get our Andrew Berry sound from today. Again, talked about his goals and his approach to this season.
To handle adversity, however it comes, in a high-level professional way, and that's actually one of the things I was probably most proud of the team last year. That we had a bunch of different curveballs, and I felt like our players, our coaches, our staff, really just handled every one, regardless of when it came or how it came. And I was really proud of that group. And every team in the NFL is going to have those periods. You don't know what it is, whether it's an injury, a losing streak, whatever. But you've got to be able to overcome those moments or those stretches if you want to be playing deep into the playoffs.
Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. So, Casey, couple of things. Browns easing into it. That's kind of the way they do things, which I get it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell if the weather hadn't been as bad and they'd had practice scheduled at a normal time, if they'd have done more one-on-ones or 11s or 7s. But they had to go early and just, they practiced on a wet field and there was no injuries to report. I consider that a win. And I think they're going to go shells tomorrow, and I think they get full pads back on Thursday. But God bless it. It's just good to see football again. We talk about it every day on here and all the nuances of it, but to actually see them practicing, it brings a warmth to my heart.
Yeah, the other thing is Andrew Berry kind of laid it out in the clip that we heard from him. There's going to be adversity. There always is. Last year they handled it well. Year before, not as well as they did last year.
Yeah, between Stefanski and Berry, this duo has a black belt in adversity, and it's been drama for years. And last year was the injury, so always know it's going to be something. Like Berry said, you don't know what it's going to be, whether it's a losing streak, whether it's injuries, or something that comes completely from left field. But between those two, they've pretty much seen it all, and they're going in their 5th season together. I feel good that whatever comes up, they'll be able to handle it.
Yeah, and so a big year for Deshaun Watson without question. Berry talked about what he has seen from Watson in his time with the Browns, as well as what he needs to see this year.
Very pleased with Deshaun. I think you've all seen that he's really worked his tail off in terms of his shoulder rehab over really like the past year. Had a really strong spring. He's done a really nice job here early in camp. So we feel like he's in a great place both physically and mentally, and look forward to a big year. Seeing how he prepares, seeing how he works in practice, seeing how he relates to his coaches. I think our biggest focus with Deshaun is just making sure that he's available. I think the rest will take care of itself.
Casey, I think you and I have both said that for quite a while. If he's able to play, I have no doubt. If he's able to play 15, 16, 17 games, no doubt that is good things will be ahead this year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's been the major downfall is just the small sample size that we get. It's tough to really get a read because you'll have pockets where he plays really well and a little bit of downtime, and then you have these stretches where he's inactive due to suspension or an injury or multiple injuries as it was last year. So that's what they need. They need to get see the breadth of what he can do over the span of a season, so you actually know what you have on your hands. But I'm very encouraged by the fact that they're not doing the on day off a day schedule that they had been going during the minicamp. You're seeing him throw back-to-back days. You're not seeing him have to be hampered by the injury. It looks just like progression. You're seeing him the ball's coming out quick, decisive, all the things that you want to see this time of year. So I'm very encouraged by where he's at right now.
And Andrew Berry did say there would be built-in days off in training camp. So when he misses a day, don't panic. It's by design. The other thing, Amari Cooper's contract. Berry talked about that, as well as Cooper's importance to the Browns.
I think everybody here understands what Amari has meant to this organization and our affinity for him. He's an excellent player, outstanding human being. He's a really good professional. And one of the things that's interesting with Amari, assuming normal health, he has a chance to get to 10,000 yards this year. A big part of our success last year, and we were glad we were able to resolve the situation coming into camp.
When you traded for Jeudy, I think you restructured first and then extended. So technically, you can do that in the same.
Yeah. So Tony, nothing that we've done would preclude us from, extending him. That's correct.
Casey, I know you wrote an article on the restructured contract and what do you kind of your lay of the land, what it means now and moving forward with Cooper for the Browns.
Well, first and foremost, it gives him stability for this year, some guaranteed money, a potential raise with the incentives for $5 million. But most importantly, it gets him on the field, it gives him the full runway of camp to learn this new offense, to get acclimated. Obviously, it gives Watson the comfortability of having his top receiver in camp as they're working through new things, nuances, option routes, the things we've discussed at length. So that's huge. But it also allows the rest of the receivers to be slotted appropriately. Had he not been there, everyone would have kind of had to step up a level, and why that may give you more opportunities, but it doesn't allow the coaches to evaluate you on what your role actually will be. Him being there does that. But I think the biggest thing is, with no years added on, which I think we all kind of expected there'd be some sort of an extension, whether it was a year or two, for them just to cut it off now, just to get him on the field. Now they could revisit that. But what it does is it opens up every option on the table going forward. So in 2025, the only veteran on contract right now is Jerry Jeudy. Everyone else will be in their rookie deals. This opens up a door for someone like Elijah Moore, who I kind of viewed as a dead man walking, so to speak, if they would have extended Cooper. Well, then now if he performs over and above his abilities, you kind of see an avenue to get him at a cheaper contract and start to fill these pieces in. And we spoke about it before. They need some of these kids on rookie deals to perform. Well, if that were to happen now, you have more avenues open to sustain your wide receiver room. If you see a big jump out of a Cedric Tillman or Jamari Thrash explodes on a seam as a vertical threat, or someone like David Bell, so it kind of opens those up. But then you also have to keep in mind you have a first-round pick next year, something you haven't had the luxury of the last 3 drafts. That kind of opens that up for you. Maybe you go at a wide receiver if you don't see the development that you need, or you look at the free agent market. With players like Brandon Ayuk coming in the final year of his deal, or someone like T. Higgins, that could prove to be enticing. Now, it's hard for me to get my mind around the Browns throwing top dollar to wide receiver market like that. They tend to look through a trade or something, but that avenue is still open. And then you always have the option of extending Cooper. If you don't see the growth out of these young guys, you get halfway through a season, Coop's performing, maybe you make a run at doing that. Or because of the good faith that you built up with Cooper and guaranteeing his money this year, maybe you let the season play out, let him test the market and see what he fields and see if he circles back, and maybe you can match that. But I think the bottom line is you got your number 1 wide receiver for the year, and every option is open on the table for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I found it interesting when Cooper met with the media a couple days ago before the weekend. He said holding out of training camp was not an option. That wasn't anything he was interested in doing because he's very regimented.
Yeah, very regimented. But if you're his agent,
Yeah,
he's
yeah, I
got
know.
zero guaranteed dollars.
I
It's
know.
it's hard to encourage him showing up for that.
No, I found it interesting that he actually, when asked about it, he was like, "Yeah, I wasn't going to hold out." So that's how I mean, how friendly the negotiations were, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cooper's just a unicorn in general. You don't find very few true number one wide receivers who are not divas, who always say the right things. Cooper's always that guy. He's always going to say the right thing and put the team first.
Yeah, and that's why, assuming he stays healthy and looks like Amari Cooper, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't find a way to get him a couple more years. We'll see. Mary Kay Cabot tweets this out. So the Browns have signed Zach Johnson. He was a US or a UFL guy, a guard, and Brian Allen is on the reserved injured list with a calf injury from, I believe it was Friday. So that injury was significant enough that he's got to be on the IR.
Yeah, and you start to look at the other options. This kind of opens the avenue up for Luke Whippler. Maybe it even extends Michael Dunn's playing career because he has that guard center versatility. And I kind of considered him on the outside looking in because they looked like they were looking to get younger at the backup guard position, drafting a Zach Zenter, all the smoke around Javian Cohen. So without Allen, I think that opens up the avenue for Whippler and Michael Dunn.
Yeah, and goes to show you when you think you have enough of one position group, go get a couple more. Because it's football and you're going to need them. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. And I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. He's also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I think that Coach Stefanski is young, but I think he's already proven that he is very good. And while he may not scream this team to a championship, he just might lead them there. This is Daryl from Dixon.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, that one obviously in response to folks that don't think he's fiery enough on the sidelines. And, again, got to be yourself. And Kevin's not a screamer.
Yeah, and I think if you looked at around the most successful coaches in the league, you'll find that in common. You know, they might get like that way behind closed doors in meeting rooms, but that's never their outward demeanor. If you look at Kyle Shanahan or Bill Belichick or Andy Reid, these guys that you would consider uber successful, they're not those kind of rah guys. And I know that you could just look north and see someone like Dan Campbell, and see a guy kind of like that. And it's more of an everyman, so it's easier to see yourself in that coach. I don't think you want the most vocal of your fan base leading your team, and that's what you get in Stefanski. You get a CEO, straightforward, even-keeled type of approach.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, think about it. Do you want your boss to be screaming at you? No. If not, it's not like they're high school kids or middle school kids even. So I get it. All right. Andrew Berry was asked where the franchise is now as opposed to where it was when he was here before. Took the opportunity to kind of reflect back and take a look at where it's been.
So number one, just mentioning really 8 years ago when I had my first stint in Cleveland. And I know this isn't a question, but I'm just going to talk about this anyway, Daryl. Everything that we went through during that time, whether it was like the lack of success on the field, the internal turmoil, just everything that went with it, it really does make you appreciate, certainly last year, but the past couple of years a lot more. And like, that's actually a cool part of the journey. Like, I wouldn't trade that for anything, because you grow and you learn, and it makes you not take the good days for granted. So I want to start off by saying that.
And Casey, when you've been to the playoffs and you're 8-9, and then you tend to forget what 1-15 and 0-16 and 1-31 was. So look at where that was. Look at where it is now, and it's night and day. Now, the challenge before Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry is consistency, consistent playoff games, and go win the damn division, please.
Yeah. Props to Andrew Berry for answering that, because they're in the middle of the storm, and sometimes it's hard to see everything unless you take a step back. But for him to give an earnest answer and kind of let you in, there was an internal turmoil inside the regime and the losing seasons and all the weight that puts on you, and that allows him to appreciate what they've cultivated here. But to your point, that's what it's about. If they've stacked and they've grown as a franchise, and that's evident in players like you trade for Zadarius Smith. But then he chose to stay. He had no say when he got traded for, but he definitely chose the Browns over other locations and did it early because this is where he wanted to be. To me, that speaks volumes. But now it's about, you got to continue that growth. That growth doesn't just stop, and to do that, what do you got to do? You got to turn back-to-back winning seasons in, double-digit winning seasons, making the playoffs. And to your point, the most important thing is now it is time to win the AFC North. That is the definitive next stop in this team's growth.
Yeah, and a lot of people would make the point, and I agree. The key to a deep playoff run, especially here, go win the division so teams have to come. Kevin Stefanski in that era has now made this a home field advantage. Teams don't want to come in here. They usually don't win when they come in here. Mm-hmm. So have a playoff game here. You want to see crazy? Playoff game in Cleveland's crazy. I've been to them. Not many people can say
that might be the biggest reflection of where they've come from, because it wasn't a home field advantage, and they've cultivated that, and it clearly is now. And if you win the division, then you get a playoff game at home, and that's the clearest avenue to making a deep playoff run. So I'm 100% with you, Dave. That's where it starts for me, man. You got to earn a home playoff game this year.
I'm old enough to have been to home playoff games in Cleveland. They're a lot of fun for the home team and the home fans. You don't want any part of this if you are a visitor. So it's time to have one of those, so a new generation can know what they're like.
Yeah, and I think that primetime game you get against the Dolphins on a Sunday night can be a pretty good indicator of what it's going to be like if you get to have teams come in here for the playoffs.
So this is from Pro Football Network. One player from each AFC team most likely to improve in 2024. They say Jeudy, and if that happens, I think it's, again, a really good sign for Cleveland. Jeudy enters a strong situation. He'll likely be the third option in the passing game behind Amari Cooper and David Njoku. Cleveland should present an opportunity for Jeudy to develop nicely. And they clearly have a front office that believes in him. That's why Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski extended him immediately. You only do that if you have a plan and know how you want to use them. I think that they kind of didn't have that plan in place in Denver.
Yeah, and they pursued him for years before they actually got him, which shows you what they thought of him ahead of time. And you just got to hope that it's a new location, kind of new feel, because you're drafted by Denver. You're the 15th overall player. The receivers drafted behind him are like Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins, and C.D. Lamb. There's a lot of pressure on him there. And now that's kind of behind him, that section of his career. Now he comes into a scenario where you're not going to be asked to be the savior. You got Amari Cooper as your one. You got David Njoku as a strong second passing option. You just kind of slot in where you fit in, let your skill set blossom. He's a vertical separator from the slot with really good yards after the catch abilities. They're going to they already have a role envisioned, but I think he's going to find a home pretty quick, and he's going to be able to win the fan base over by just making plays.
All right, so you mentioned David Njoku. He talked about his role in this new offense and how interesting it is. He and Kevin Stefanski both talked about what the tight end's role will be.
You go into every game thinking specifically about your guys, and Dave's top of the list, with who we're trying to get the ball to. And then you really, as an offense, you design plays where he's primary, or you feel really good that you're going to get a certain look. and then it's the quarterback's job to distribute the ball accordingly. So we've gone into games where we didn't think it'd be a big game for a tight end, and then all of a sudden you walk away and they've got a ton of catches. So it's really based on how the defense deploys is where that ball goes, but no secret that we're trying to get Dave the ball.
Whatever they need me to do, I'll do. Obviously, it's more exciting times. I guess, they're trying to give me the ball more, so I'm happy. But whatever they need me to do, block, catch, run, dive, duck, dip, everything, I can do.
We hear, talk about maybe it's more spread out, more freedom. Do you feel like you'll be maybe away from the inline more this year?
I don't know. It's a good question. We're still in our early days of camp, so we're still, figuring out ourselves, our own identity and everything. So just one day at a time, but so far I'm happy.
Casey, the other thing is that kind of shows you the growth from Njoku. What do you need me to do, as opposed to I want the damn ball.
Yeah, and it's that mentality that got him to be one of the best overall tight ends in the league. He's complete. There's nothing he can't do as a tight end, but you can tell there's a little excitement from him, knowing that he's probably going to be more in the plans in the passing game. And if you've seen how he played over the second half of last year, to me it's a no-brainer. You got to get the ball in his hands. You got to have a concerted effort to making him part of the game plan and just punish the defense and move the chains. And it just puts you in a rhythm, getting easy yards. He's a great candidate to do that. So I think that you're going to see growth out of him. I know a lot of people had him as a regression candidate. I can't see that. I think that this is a player that you have to get the ball in his hands, and I expect 1,000 yards out of David Njoku this year.
Yeah, he's a guy that if I'm a defensive coordinator, you got to account for. Well, how are we going to deal with him? He's one of those guys. I would agree. Case Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Andrew Berry. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, Barking Dogs podcast as well. Andrew Berry met with the media today, talked about the challenges of building a deep roster in today's NFL.
The way we consider, attrition within the roster, it's twofold. It's one, the level of risk that you may have in a certain position group based on, look, every player that you sign or trade for or draft, they don't have the same level of injury risk. Some have maybe a more extended history. Some have been, durable for their entire careers. So that's certainly something that we take into account when we build out a position group. And then the second piece of it is, it's why roster building is 365 days a year, because you can never have enough depth. And the groups, we always joke, the groups that you go into the camp and you're like, oh man, we're really deep here. Like, we're going to either have to release a good player, or we're going to have to work a trade. It seems like those are the groups that you get wiped out with, first, that type of thing. So we are very, cognizant of that you can't build enough depth into the roster, but we certainly will die trying.
Yeah, see, tackles last year, Casey, but to his point, that's you look at it and they're deep at a number of spots.
Well, you pointed out earlier, you get your backup center gone for the year, Brian Allen. It changes the complexity of the depth of that particular position group. But he's right. You look at several areas and you think cornerbacks one. Well, you get tested in that right away. Greg Newsome's out, and that's one of the pieces you felt good about them, considering it very deep. But what the Browns have kind of constructed here is you have several high-end contracts. And when you have so many high-end contracted players, you really need your depth to be players that you've drafted and or signed as unrestricted free agents, because that's how you fill in the depth without kind of breaking yourself financially. That's the reason that when a player becomes available that might be an older player as a vet, and you might not even see a role as a starter, you see fans want to go get that guy. Well, you might not be able to afford that guy if he's not going to be someone playing, serious time on the field. So roster construction is a very critical element, and the Browns don't like to pay for depth, so they need these lower lower drafted round players, rounds 5, 6, 7, to step up and actually fill roles as depth players. And you've seen that in many instances, but they need to keep that churning on the bottom end of the roster so you can afford the high end contract. So it's a very complex thing they've built here, but so far they've had no problem keeping it going.
Yeah, and that's how good organizations stay good and have multiple playoff runs, is by you develop players, and they're starting to do that. Along those lines, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is one of them. So the next steps for JOK, a higher snap count. 2023 logged 756 total snaps. Guys like Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, Bobby Wagner, all over 1,000. What we need to point out by that is there were times early in the season that he wasn't on the field all the time. End of the season, he was in there for all the snaps. So it's an evolution process for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Yeah, and if you look at the names on that list of players that he needs to be on that snap count with Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, of the guys who play that really high level number of snaps, that's the level he's looking to crack. That's the echelon of linebacker he's looking to join. So, yeah, I agree. It's part of the responsibilities of being a linebacker. When you only use two guys, you want to be one of those two guys. And when he has the skill set that he does, you don't want him off the field because there's too many ways to use him. So I agree with Mac. I think that this is a guy that you're going to see a slight uptick. And it was earlier in the year last year where there's some inconsistencies and he wasn't able to be on the field as much. And you've seen how he finished the season. I think it's just the next step in his evolution. And eventually I expect him to wear the green dot at some point in his career. Although when you sign a veteran like Jordan Hicks, you could see the appeal of putting the green dot on him at least start the year. We'll see if it finishes the same way or not.
Yeah, the other thing is we've heard that, there's some difference of opinion relative to a contract extension in the dollar figure. Mm-hmm. That snap count, Browns want it up to pay top end. You got to be on the field all the time. Andrew Berry talked about JOK and kind of his next steps as well.
He's made the high end plays. He has, has matrix type athleticism where he just has rare movement skills and he can play behind the line of scrimmage. He's fast. But where he's grown over the past 3 years is his ability to reduce his errors, because sometimes our greatest traits also become like our biggest negatives, and his aggression at times would have him, overcommit and, we'd make 2 plays, give 1 up, make a play, give 2 up, things like that. And I think that is something that's decreased over the past 3 years, and hopefully will continue to decrease as we go into year 4.
And really, when that and we saw that in the last year. Mm-hmm. If that continues, now you got a Pro Bowl linebacker, and you're gonna have to pay him. And you know what? Andrew Berry and the Browns will write that check every day of the week if he produces at that level.
Yeah, and it comes down to his ability to diagnose and click and close on plays, and you saw it. You saw what it evolved into last year. And to Andrew Berry's point, there were times, especially early in his career, where he would kind of get fooled and see something and react too quickly to it. But because of his natural movement abilities, he doesn't have to do that. He can literally diagnose and then do it, as opposed to trying to be one step ahead. He can see it and then just go make it happen because he has the best movement skills of any linebacker in the NFL. Now he gives up a little bit of size to make that happen, but he is so uberly athletic that he has that ability to do. And it's like Barry said, it's almost Matrix-like.
Yeah, and again, I would expect them to, assuming the production is what we expect it to be, I would expect they'll get that contract done because I do believe he's one of the foundation pieces on defense. I know you wrote an article. Do you think the 2024 Browns defense can be the most talented unit that Jim Schwartz has ever coached? And he has coached a Super Bowl winning defense in Philadelphia. So we'll start with that. Can this defense be the best he's coached?
Yeah, so when you look at the 15 years as a defensive coordinator, not even counting the years as a head coach in Detroit, I singled out some of the defenses. You look at the 2008 Tennessee Titans, the 2014 Buffalo Bills, and that Super Bowl winning defense, the 27 Philadelphia Eagles. And you kind of pull it apart and look at all the individual pieces, and you see some similarities. Obviously, all those teams are the driving engine was the defensive line. The 2008 Titans, you had Albert Haynes. Now, I know people might have had a different feeling of Albert Haynesworth because of the end of his career, kind of melded in. But the 2008 Albert Haynesworth was one of the most dominant players in the league, regardless of positions. First team All-Pro. You look at the 2 ends, Kyle Vanden Bosch, a late-stage Javon Kearse, very talented. Keith Bullock in the middle, First team All-Pro Cortland Finnegan as a cover corner, 2 Pro Bowl safeties and Chris Hope, Michael Griffin. Very complete defense in 2008. They were second in the league in points, allowing 14.6 points a game. Very good defense. The 2014 Buffalo Bills, that defensive line was insane. You have Mario Williams, first team All-Pro, Marcel Darius, first team All-Pro, Kyle Williams, run stuffer, Pro Bowler, like that. That was a very formidable defensive line. And he only got to spend 1 year in Buffalo. It's kind of crazy to think what he would have been able to do if that team would have been allowed to evolve with Jim Schwartz at the head of it. 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, you got Big Fletcher Cox in the middle. You got Brandon Graham on the outside. You got Chris Long as a high-end depth piece on the back end. You got Malcolm Jenkins. You know, that's the bones of that defense. You know, and obviously people kind of look at them differently because that the Super Bowl itself, no defense was played by either team. But for them to get to where they got, that defense was top 5 in every major statistical category. But when you examine all those teams and pull them apart, I think the closest comparison is that 2008 team to this current Browns roster. I still would give the edge to this Browns roster just on the depth. Obviously, you have the high-end players. You know, you got Miles, you got Denzel, and what we believe JOK is and is going to be. Grant Delpit's another X-factor player, but it's just too deep. It's Darius and Dalvin Tomlinson and Shelby Harris, Jordan Hicks, Juan Thornhill, Martin Emerson. Like this team has more complete depth and quality starters than any other team that Jim Schwartz has led, and that says a lot.
Yeah, without question. That is lofty company, so we'll see. They got to do it on the field, but yeah, I as you lay it out that way, I understand the thought process. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. And I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon, Kentucky. I think a lot of people are probably going to be off-put by the fact that Kevin Stefanski will be calling plays this year, but it's up to the players to execute those plays. We have to be efficient. I think the offense is going to be multiple. I think it's going to look like a lot the same, but I think there are going to be a lot of different wrinkles. I think there will be more motion. I believe the motion is going to happen more because hopefully we can stay healthier this year. That's going to take a look. That was our biggest problem last year was health. And I think, if we can keep that together, we can be respectable.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I think it will look the same. I think there will be more motion. I think there will be more 11 personnel, more shotgun. And I think there should be more because I think those are things Deshaun Watson does well. I think the moves on the offensive staff were made to play to Deshaun Watson's strengths.
Mm-hmm. And it's also made to get Stefanski out of his comfort zone of the safety net of calling the stuff that he was always ingrained with. And, the thing that's not popular to hear is it's going to be what it's always been. It's always been a collaboration with Stefanski. But people want to point to just because he's calling plays as if he's some dictator. But it's just he changed the collaborator. So it's going to look different because of the base of things he has to draw from. But at the end of the day, this offense is going to be Ken Dorsey and Tommy Reese and Nick Charlton, Bill Musgrave, Chad O'Shea. All those voices are going to culminate. They're going to get funneled through Stefanski into Watson's helmet. So what you've done is you've kept the voice consistent from Stefanski to Watson or Stefanski to Jameis, because he's that communicator. And at the end of the day, the buck, stops with him. So, but yeah, it's going to be different. Obviously, you have the same players, so you're going to lean on the same strengths that those players have, but it's going to be to accentuate Watson's strength. So, to your point, ton of shotgun, 11 personnel, motion, window dressing, just confusing defenses, getting people to show their hand ahead of time.
Yep.
These are all advantages you see other offenses take advantage of, and you saw Watson do the same thing while he was in Houston. So that's what it's going to be. It's you might see an uptick in certain things that they weren't really leaning on in the past, and obviously without Nick Chubb, you're going to be forced to do that if he can't start the season. So you're not going to be able to start with what your go-to 1-2 punch would have been. So you're going to get to see them lean on different things, and as Chubb gets folded back in, maybe some of the running concepts start to look something to what akin to what we've seen in the past. But starting off, you're going to see just a ton of shotgun, a more inside zone, I guess, running the ball. But the option routes kind of change things on the outside. So it's going to be a mixed bag. But because of the skill set of Amari Cooper, David Njoku, you're going to see some concepts that we've seen in years past.
So this is interesting as well. Kevin Stefanski is 11 wins away from passing both Marty Schottenheimer and Sam Ratigliano for third all-time in Browns coaching wins, behind Blanton Collier and Paul Brown. By the end of the season, Stefanski will pass Marty Schottenheimer and Bill Belichick for fourth most coached games in franchise history. I find that unbelievable. That that just shows you how tough it's been to survive as a head coach during Browns franchise. That this guy, only in his second contract, is already going to be fourth for most games coached, and he should be.
Yeah,
it shows you how little patience we've had with head coaches in this franchise history.
Yeah, I think it speaks just as much to the stability and continuity as anything else. Seeing a coach allowed to implement a system, allowed to see it grow and come to fruition, and to see a plan through. In years past, we saw so many plans get started and not even reach the second phase before they were scrapped, and for the next candidate to come in and have the same thing happen to them. So to see Stefanski actually get the first full contract, get extended, you're starting to see the fruits of that, and to see him names up there, with Marty, and to see, like, at the end of the year, there's a chance that he's going to be staring up at Blanton Collier and Paul Brown. That's great company to be associated with. So yeah, I'm happy for Stefanski to get this opportunity, and I think it's going to pay off. It's paid off, in my opinion. It's paid off so far, and I can only imagine what it's going to look like, at the end of this next contract, how far he can climb up in those ranks.
All right, so this is from ESPN's Dan Graziano. So significant knee injury in Week 2 ended Nick Chubb's season 2023, required multiple surgeries to repair. Open camp on the PUP list. Isn't likely to be ready for the start of the season, but the Browns are encouraged by the way his rehab is going, and believe with certainty he will play at some point during this season. Andrew Berry, today during his media availability, talked about Nick Chubb.
Nick, he's Batman, right? Like, we are incredibly pleased with the work that he's put in, the progress that he's made. He still has a little ways to go, but we're really happy to see where he is as we enter camp, and look forward to him to continue to improve the health of the knee.
So he was asked if there was any timeline. It won't put a timeline on it. It's understandable. There's some progress that fans, I'm shocked at some of the things that he's been able to do, but again, kind of tempered by Andrew Berry saying, yeah, we're not putting a timeline just yet on it.
Yeah, everyone's impressed. Like, not even just Browns fans, people around the league, when I talk to them, like, just the amount of steps that Chubb has taken. Because unfortunately for Chubb, that injury happened on national TV, so everyone got to see that and feel that reaction live. And then that kind of stays in your brain when you see someone's knee moving in multiple directions like that, and how could they ever be the same again, and to see this offseason, obviously he's a quiet worker. He's not a guy who's out there being boisterous, but these clips, they just keep coming out, and then the most encouraging thing was something that wasn't even filmed this past week, when he was working on a side field on lateral agility drills, and just to see hear everyone's amazement about how he looked in those drills. So it's all coming together, and they're smart not to put a timeline on it. But we're not too far off from being the opposite, and Batman wishing he was Nick Chubb. It's just the kind of effort he's putting into this rehab, and don't be surprised when he plays major impact roles this season. And obviously you don't know how soon that's going to be, but I think it's going to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other thing I would say is if he is on the PUP list and isn't scheduled to come back until October, that's okay too. Because you want him later and longer than earlier.
Mm-hmm. I look at that 3-game home stretch right before you hit the bye, and I feel like that is a good sweet spot. If you get him back right then for that 3-game stretch against the Ravens, Bengals, and Chargers, and then you get him a bye week, I think that for me, that looks like the most obvious landing spot at this point.
Yeah, and again, you want him down the stretch because that's when the games are going to definitely matter. Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch, find the letters, make a match, lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. CeeDee Lamb, Cowboys wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, talked about his top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL. This from the Edge podcast.
Denzel Ward. He's a sleeper. Bro, it's nice. His technique is crazy. I watch a lot of film, you know what I'm saying? I watch on potential guys that's going to guard me. I watch.
I mean, we play the Browns next year.
Exactly. And I watch how you move. I watch how he does everything right, bro. He ain't going to hold you. He gonna mirror you. I mean, at the receiver position, that's the best technique.
And he tackles.
And he's coming up to make a play. You're going to feel him.
With that, let's welcome in Max Chadwick, Pro Football Focus. Max, so Denzel Ward ranked top 5 by CeeDee Lamb as well, and he's pretty much been top 5 in anybody's cornerback rankings. When you look at him, what do you see?
Yeah, I think that Denzel Ward, obviously injuries have played a part in him being banged up over the last few years. I think he's certainly in that conversation of the best cornerbacks in the league. I don't know if I personally would have him top 5 right now, but he's a very, very talented player. And I think CeeDee Lamb obviously knows better than anyone, who the best corners are. So, yeah, it's a high praise from CeeDee Lamb, but it's been warranted for how well he's played over the last few years.
And you mentioned the injuries, and in part that's because he will come up and run support and hit people. He's had some concussion issues, but there's something to be said for a cornerback that just is going to continue to play the way he thinks it should be played.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. And I think, the injuries have really kind of killed him over the last 2 years. Even when he's on the field, you can tell that he's banged up and he hasn't really graded out as well as he did, through his first 4 seasons in the NFL from 2018 to 2021. The last 2 have been not as great. So I'm looking for a bounce back year, and hopefully he can stay healthy in 2024 and reestablish himself as a top 5 corner in the league. Like I said, I'm not willing to say that right now, but he is certainly in the mix for sure.
All right, so this is from the Bleacher Report. Expectations for the Browns' top rookies in the preseason. Michael Hall, evaluating Hall's performance may be tough because he's likely to be going against backup linemen. If he can control those reps, Hall will prove he's ready for some first-team reps early in the regular season. Zach Zinter, spot in the starting lineup may be hard to come by right away, but Zinter's goal is to be pushing for a starting position. If he's that good, the Browns will find a spot for him to play on the offensive line. Needs to prove to the coaching staff they have the 6th offensive line starter on the roster throughout his preseason. And Jamari Thrash. Best case situation is that in an open competition, he is in place for the 3rd wide receiver spot along Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, and David Bell. If he is good enough, the Browns could even consider trading Moore to ensure they have 3 young stars in support of their 2-star pass catchers, which would be Jeudy and Amari Cooper. All right, when you look at those, what do you think of Hall? When you look at Hall, what do you see?
Yeah, I like him. I think he certainly was a guy that I would take it on day 2. So I think it was worth the pick that the Browns used on him. I don't foresee him right now being a starting player on that defensive line. I think Dalvin Tomlinson and Shelby Harris will probably be your 2 starting D tackles this upcoming season. But I think, just because he's not going to start doesn't mean he's not going to get a lot of snaps, right? Because the defensive line rotates all the time. So I do think that Michael Hall is going to get a pretty good amount of snaps in his rookie year, even if he's not going to be a starter.
Yeah, and again, he's a guy that they're going to want to develop a little bit. He's only 21. He just turned 21. You want him to get a little bit bigger. He's quick, and you could see them finding situational matchups in pass rush situations that they like and exploiting. That's the way Jim Schwartz rolls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's definitely a toolsy guy that, showed off those tools at Ohio State. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what he could do on that defensive line. And he's got 2 great edge defenders alongside him, and Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, to kind of take some pressure off him, because the offensive line is really going to be focused on stopping those 2. That it could free up Michael Hall for some one-on-ones, and he could take advantage of those.
Zinter, that's a guy that kind of seems to be that pick seems to be all over the place. I personally liked it. Zach Zinter, I think if he was healthy, probably wouldn't have been where the Browns picked him. But if you play that position at Michigan for Jim Harbaugh, I think that translates into the NFL.
Yeah, again, I don't see him being a starter for the Browns because they are really, really good at guard already with Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller there already. But yeah, they're obviously taking him in the 3rd round. They obviously have a plan for him long term, and again, he's more of a guy that I think will be more of a depth piece to at least start his career. And the hope is that once he gets healthy, obviously too, he could be a full-time starter maybe in years down the road. But as of right now, I don't anticipate him being a starting guard for the Browns, considering how good the 2 guards they have right now.
What about Thrash? What do you see with him? I know you've looked at him at his college tape in Louisville and I think it was Georgia State. What do you see with Thrash?
Yeah, he kind of fits the mold of what Cleveland has been going for at wide receiver recently with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. Just a really, really good route runner. He's a little bit of a skinnier player. He's really good after the catch, though. I like Jamari Thrash a lot. I thought he was a really talented player at Louisville, and he kind of fits, like I said, he kind of fits that mold of a Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, just like a guy who's going to get open and maybe create a little bit after the catch too.
So we've mentioned Jeudy and Elijah Moore. Who do you think's poised to have a bigger season? Who do you think fits this system that the Browns are likely to run, which is more 11 personnel, so more 3 and 4 wides? Who do you think jumps out between those 2?
Yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy is probably the guy I would go with as to have the better numbers than Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore has been kind of a disappointment throughout his career so far, and Jeudy to an extent has as well. But I think Jeudy is definitely the bigger name, and I think I fully expect him to be the number 2 receiver behind Amari Cooper this upcoming season.
All right, before I let you go, this is from ESPN.com. Browns non-starters to know. They go with Devin Bush. Browns played base defense only 16% of the time last year, but they were fantastic with just 3.6 yards per play allowed. Bush played only 250 snaps in Seattle, had better numbers than he did his final year for the Steelers. Can he help the Browns continue to shut down the run when they bring a third linebacker on the field? So Bush is a guy that finished high in Defensive Player of the Year voting his rookie year, fell off, was injured, subsequent years, Pittsburgh. When you look at Devin Bush, what do you see?
I see a really athletic player who still seems like he's figuring it out. He definitely was not worth the massive trade up that the Steelers did to get him in the draft. I think he was like a top 10 pick overall. Definitely was not worth that either, but really athletic player that I think will be one of the rotational guys in that linebacker unit. You know, obviously with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Jordan Hicks as projected starters right now, that I think that a guy who could go off the bench a little bit and rotate in on a basis is Devin Bush. So, yeah, I get why they say he's one of the non-starters to know, because I do think he's going to play a significant role in that defense this year.
Fair to say, Jim Schwartz usually, when he picks up guys like that, it's usually to use them in certain situations. And I have no idea what that is. Jim Schwartz, I think, has a plan for Devin Bush. Devin Bush doesn't do everything well, so they're not going to ask him to do the things that he struggles with. They're going to put him in situations to succeed. Think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jim Schwartz is clearly one of the best defensive coordinators that we have in the NFL. In fact, he won the Assistant Coach of the Year award last year, right? So I think he's going to definitely utilize Devin Bush in the best ways possible, which probably is going to be more as a downhill player, as a run defender, and as a blitzer. And you don't really want him in coverage too much. So I like Devin Bush in that role, and I think that he could be, again, like I said, not a starter maybe for the Browns, but a guy who definitely can contribute and come in to spell, Jordan Hicks or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Want to remind you to check out Pro Football Focus's mock fantasy draft simulator. It allows you to prepare like pro for your fantasy football leagues. Sync your league to updated analysis using PFF Plus's tools, projections, and analysis to better help you throughout the 2024 season. Separate your team from the competition by using PFF's Fantasy Mock Draft Simulator and PFF Fantasy Plus. As always, great stuff. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. As always, really good stuff. Again, check out the Fantasy Mock Draft Simulator from PFF. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Guardians. Guardians beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, Paul Hoynes, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
We turn our attention to the Guardians. Took 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia against the Phillies, who have the best record in baseball. Always a good thing. All right, I understand. Phillies started Kobe Aldred, rookie Tyler Phillips, and Christopher Sanchez. Sanchez pretty good. Not exactly the guys they're going to trot out there in a playoff series. Let's welcome in Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Hoynesy, the Guardians just keep finding a way to win.
Yeah, Dave, they've kind of, they've been struggling over the last two and a half weeks. Just kind of losing 2, winning 1, kind of, on the treadmill, so to speak. And it was nice to see them come in to that series in, Citizens Bank Park and, take the first game Friday night, kind of playing their style of baseball, and then get hammered the next night 8-0 with the Phillies hitting 4 home runs, and then coming back on Sunday and beating the Phillies at their own game with home runs by John Kenzie Noel and the game winner by Stephen Kwan.
Well, you know that they got the big lead and got a bunch of games over 500. And as you mentioned, they've been kind of 500 last 10. I think they're 5 out of their last 10. Still 4.5 games ahead of the Twins in the AL Central. Trade deadline a little over 24 hours away, 6 o'clock tomorrow. What are your thoughts about the Guardians adding to this roster?
Well, I think they're going to make some kind of move, Dave. I really do. You know, the guy, the obvious choice to me is the guy there, Jack Flaherty, Detroit starter, who is, opening that series against them on Monday night. He's facing the Guardians again for like the third time in his last 4 starts. So they know him well. He's a free agent at the end of the year. It would seem to be the ideal fit. The Tigers are playing better, but they're 5.5 games out of the last wild card spot. They're 12 games behind Cleveland in the AL Central. They would seem to be in sell mode.
Yeah, I'm with you. Wave them over, tell them this is what the clubhouse looks like with the Guardians. Pull up a chair. We're going to rest you. You get an extra day rest. All right, this is from Buster Olney, ESPN national writer, what he's heard about the Guardians. Guardians are looking for a starting pitcher, some kind of hitter, though they're reluctant to part with any of their better prospects. And Hoynes, fans don't want to hear that, but I will say, Chris Antonetti in this front office, it's a little tougher for them. They can't, the additional challenge they face, they can't outspend their mistakes. So if you give up a prospect, you got to have a pretty good idea of what you're giving up. If you think a guy can impact your team in a positive way in a year or two, you probably are hesitant there.
Yeah, they have payroll restrictions that limits what they can do. But Dave, this is these kind of seasons don't come along every year. You cannot sit in your hands on this one. You have got to make an addition to the team, either offensively or pitching wise. If good trades are supposed to hurt both sides. They're supposed to cause pain on both sides. You give up something to get something. And, I think that's the position Cleveland is in right now. Limited payroll or no limited payroll.
Yeah, that's fair. And, to that point, attendance has been higher than expected. So there is that revenue stream that's been out there as well.
If you give up something, you're going to want something back. So, I'm sure people are asking, for Chase DeLauder. I'm sure they're asking for their top, pitching prospects. And, that's the game you've got to play if you're Chris Antonetti or Mike Chernoff. I think they'll wait. Right now it's kind of like a game of chicken, don't you think? I mean,
yeah.
Who blinks first? What move do you make? Do you, as the deadline approaches, the need for your team, especially if you're Cleveland, I think grows. And the more you might be forced to make a deal, then perhaps a deal that you don't want to make.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. This is interesting as well. This is from John Heyman, and here's a name that has not been out there. Nestor Cortez, left-handed pitcher from the New York Yankees. He believes he will be available. And Cortez is a guy, he's 4-9 this year, 4.13 ERA, but a 3.95 million prorated is his number. It's a guy that, because of who the Yankees have in front of him and Cole and the like, probably doesn't project to be their starter. I'm not so sure he wouldn't project to be like a third starter for the Guardians, though.
That's a great name. He's the guy that threw the phantom pitch to Andrés Giménez this year. You remember that? He fake pitched him on the mound. Where did that come from? So, you got to like a guy that is inventive, just kind of kind of screwing around on the mound. But he pitched great against Cleveland in the postseason, 2 years ago. He really kind of, denied them advancing to the ALCS.
Yeah, and again, that's a guy that, John Hyman's pretty plugged in nationally. If he says he's available, he's probably hearing that he's available. Yeah, some of the other names that are linked to the Guardians that are hitters, Brent Rooker, A's have come out and said they're in no hurry to trade him. Again, that means we might trade him, but it's going to cost you higher prospects than you want to deal. Lane Thomas, that's intriguing, 28-year-old outfielder, $5.5 million prorated this year. Elias Diaz is a 33-year-old catcher, not sure that works. Taylor Ward could be. Conforto, Jesus Sanchez. Josh Bell was DFA'd. That I can't see. I can't see another year of the Josh Bell experience for the Guardians. I think they had enough of that. But
yeah, Josh was just so inconsistent here. You know, he'd have 2 good games, 5 bad ones. You never got the production you thought you were going to get out of him.
So to your point about the trade deadline and prospects, this comes from Kyle Glasser. He did write for Baseball America and now is a San Diego Padres beat reporter. As the trade deadline ramps up, it's important to remember this. Only 1 in 5 prospects, roughly, traded at the deadline ever go on to consequential major league careers. And they define that as at least 2 years in the big leagues. And I was always curious at that number. He's done the research. It's gone up a little bit in the last several years. It was way below that the previous 10 years.
Yeah, prospects are prospects for a reason. That's an old baseball saying. But the game has gotten so much younger, Dave, with teams keeping prices down, by, kind of putting veterans out on an island, signing them to 1-year deals and really, stressing youth in their in their 26-man roster. So that's why the value of prospects has gone up.
Before I let you go, have you been hearing that the Guardians are at least involved in conversations and because it seems like when you look at reports, it's like potential fits, but you never hear, the Guardians are in on that. My sense of it is, and you would know better than me, that's just not the way this front office operates.
No, it isn't. But they were in on Randy Rosarina. I know they had, they had talked to Tampa Bay before, Rosarina got traded. They liked him. I'm curious to see how he would have fit in Cleveland's outfield. Maybe play him in center because he played left for the Rays. So I don't think you're going to play him in left field with Quan there. But that gives you an idea what kind of hitter they're looking for. Pretty. That's an all-star caliber, position player.
Yeah. Do you get the sense they're in on other guys? Is there anybody that you've heard of, or?
I haven't heard of too many guys, but they always throw a wide net out there. So anybody that we're talking about right now, you can assume that they've kicked the tires on, that they've talked about, that they've contacted that player's team. I mean, they don't miss a beat here. They're just trying to find the right fit right now. But they are. I am sure they're into this process up to their neck.
And my guess is it's going to be closer to the deadline before they make their move. It seems like that's usually the way it works.
Yeah, the closer the deadline forces deals. That's why there's a deadline, and that's I think we'll probably have to wait until tomorrow. It's as 6 p.m. approaches.
Paul Hoynes, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Hoynesy.
Thanks, Dave.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. Always really good and insightful Guardians coverage for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock, trade deadline day. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.